everyone, this is Nikki on the design team here at Scrappiness. I'm here to show you this fun card for Valentine's or just to send somebody some love at any time of the year with the new release. So we're going to use this stitched hearts background. We're going to use some different distress oxides, the love you sentiment that came with this new release, and the new XOXO sprinkles, and these hearts, which are called the red heart sprinkles. So we're going to use just a few products. We're going to make a simple card, but we're going to give it a really bright spotlight effect in the middle of the card. And I'm going to show you how I do that. There are lots of ways to do this, but I feel like this way just makes the middle of your card really pop. So we're going to check that out. Let's get started. Before we start into this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get all the info from Scrappiness. And then let's look at this cover die. So I cut out this stitched heart cover die on this beautiful blue paper. And you see how much dimension, it just looks really cool. But we're going to make it look even cooler. So I'm going to get out my Waffle Flower Media Mat. This kind of helps hold down the paper. It's great to do ink blending with. And we're going to pull out my ink in black soot. And this ink, I've always kind of struggled, like what do I do with the black ink? But I have started using it for this process and just love it. My ink pad is a little bit extra juicy. I don't know why this one is, but I have certain colors that are just have a lot of ink in them. So this one, you're going to see me tapping it off on the side of this mat and just using small amounts to build up my color. And if you've seen my other videos, you know that I am not left-handed, but I have a broken right arm, and so I'm not supposed to do much weight bearing with this right arm, so I'll try to speed this up because I'm definitely slower ink blending with my left hand, and you'll see me occasionally cheat and try to do it with my right, but that's why this is taking a little extra long time. But I just kind of start around the edges, building up the color because I really want it to go from dark to light. So I'm going to build up a good amount of color, and then I'm going to go back and try to kind of pull that color in towards the center to make that spotlight effect. So get a lot of color on the edges like I'm doing, and then I'll come back in with this same brush and try to kind of pull it to the center. So what I think makes this spotlight card easier to do is starting with a colored piece of cardstock. So I picked a pretty dark color, and that's why I'm doing black soot as my shadow. If you have colors of cardstock that match some of your other inks and you've got a slightly darker version of that ink, you could always use a colored ink with this. But if you're using a darker cardstock, using some black soot really helps. And so I love black soot with like a dark royal blue or a navy. It really highlights that spotlight effect that I'm going for. So I'm blending all of this. I'm going to pull things towards the middle, try to make it as even as possible and an even amount of shadow. And so I'll work on that, and then we'll get to this next step. So you always want to let your background dry. So while I let it dry, I went on and cleaned this Waffle Flower Media Mat, and I'm getting out my sentiment, which is the Love You sentiment from Scrappiness. This has a shadow and a main part, so it needs to be cut apart. I'm using Scrappiness little wire trimmers, which do a really good job. We'll cut that apart, and I'm going to show you how we're going to make this sentiment stand out. So I cut this out. I'm going to try to keep it attached to the paper. And so you'll see me kind of pushing it back down into its little area here. I feel like that keeps, when you want to ink blend this area and you've already done the cutting, if you can keep it in your piece of paper, which you'll see me line it back up and try to stick it down, it just keeps it the way that it needs to fit on that background. And it also keeps it very even, because what we're going to try to do is make an ombre effect on this. So we need it to line up and have the appropriate, dark and light areas at the same place on the sentiment. So if you take it apart, you're going to have more trouble with that. So I like to match my sentiment to my heart. So here's what I'm doing. I'm testing candied apple. It looks a little bit orange to me. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to try festive berries and see if that looks a little closer to the heart sequins or the heart clay embellishments that I have. And I feel like that's a much better match. So we're gonna do Festive Berries here. I'm using a really small ink blending thing. And as you can see, Festive Berries has a lot of color in my ink pad. So I'm really just starting at the bottom part and then slowly fading up. We're trying to get that kind of ombre look, which makes our sentiment really stand out. You can do all kinds of things with your sentiment, but I think if you give it a little bit of color variation, it really shows up well. So putting lots of color at the bottom, just barely going up on the top, and I'm going to do the same thing with the Love You. So it really helps to have a nice small ink blender right here. I like this one because I can kind of go across and try to get my lines even on how dark it is in certain areas. So I will keep doing this and then we'll move on to the next part. Here's how it looks with that ombre effect where it's lighter at the top and darker at the bottom. Now I'm going to get these two punched out, get all their parts separated, and then we're going to start adding pieces of Love You to the back. What I did with this is I cut it out of that same blue cardstock, and there's a couple of reasons that I did this. I wanted this to give it a very cohesive look for this paper. I feel like the shadow of it makes it a darker shadow. You could do the shadow in black behind these, but when you add extra pieces, you really make that cardstock stick up off the paper. And if you're putting white behind the Love You, sometimes I feel like you can see that and it just doesn't look quite as good as either matching the paper or making that background black. So I'm going to glue all of these two blue U's together, and then on the top I will put my ombre U, and I'll show you how that looks. So here they are. I'm gluing the top to the two sets of the blue. And you can't, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to make them even, so you can't see much of that blue, but when it's sitting down, I think it just gives a little bit darker look, as you can see on the Love there. Just gives it a darker look that kind of makes it stand out from the page, and I feel like that really helps with this whole spotlight idea. So now we're going to create a shadow behind our Love You that I think also will help the spotlight effect. So cutting out of vellum paper, I feel like makes a very good statement for that spotlight. Look how this looks right here. I feel like the Love You is really lifted off the page, and putting that vellum behind it just really makes it shine. So I'm keeping this with no sparkly elements, which is really hard for me. I don't usually do this. I want to like make everything with glossy accents and lots of bright stuff, but I think with these clay embellishments, it looks so nice to have everything more of a matte color. When we need to have a matte color and when you're using vellum, I really love using the media matte glue, and I'm going to show you a way that I use it. Some people will put smaller tips on this, some will do other things, but I feel like I came up with a really great way to put very small amounts of this on it so that you're not seeing it behind your vellum. So this multimedia mat, you can see I've got a big glob right there on the back of my Love You. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bone folder from Cat Scrappiness and I'm going to use it to dab this on. So the multimedia mat comes with kind of a big tip, especially for if you're wanting to use it in little small spaces like this. And I don't have any super small tips to put on it. So, and I've just not had great luck with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt it directly onto my bone folder, because the bone folder is very easy to rub off any of that glue. You don't have to worry about it staying there. So I'm going to squirt some on here and then I'm going to dab it slowly behind this sentiment. And the reason you want to dab it behind the color is because that vellum is see-through. So if you get this, it does dry matte, so it helps a lot, but you still don't want to get a whole lot behind your vellum that's peeking out so that you can see it. It almost looks like it's a little wet, and that can really cause some trouble with your card. So I felt like this was a good compromise way to use this type of multimedia matte glue and not have to figure out a way to find a little small tip for it. Even just using that small little dots of glue, you can really see that it still holds it on great. I do hold it down for a second, but you don't really see any of that peeking through. Maybe on my U right there where I had the big glob, you'll see a little bit, but as it dries, that disappears, which is the reason for using that glue with vellum. It's definitely, of all the glues that I've tried with Vellum, because Vellum is so tricky, this is the best one as far as drying where you're not seeing it if you make a mistake. So definitely worth considering, and they do sell it at the Cat Scrappiness store. So next, I just need to decide where I want my heart embellishments to go. I'm using the larger heart from the red heart sprinkles, and I'm using the small heart that comes with the XOXO sprinkles. So if you see that small heart and are wondering where I'm getting it from, it's the tray over here. These triangle trays, amazing for using with doing your embellishments. I'm going to use my regular Gina K Connect glue on these, and the reason is because with Gina K Connect, a lot of times you can move your items around for a little while, and I like to be careful on this placement. You could put it on the heart. It's probably easier to remove your heart and stick a dot on your actual card, but either way works. I do think you should consider doing your cards and the embellishments. I think that it makes sense to do an odd number of embellishments. I think that just looks better to the eye. So you'll see here I have 7, and I almost always have an odd number on there. I just feel like that really looks better to my eye. That wraps this card up. So I'm going to show you some pictures of the final, but I want you to make sure that you've hit that subscribe button. And if you're looking for any of these products, please click the links in the description below. That will help give me a small commission at no cost to you. I hope you enjoyed this card and making this fun spotlight. Have a great day. Bye.